I've known of Warren Farrell's work for many years. I'm gonna get in early here and hold up some of his books. I think Warren has published over 12 books. Is my understanding. And look, it's actually a massive deal to have Warren with us today. My trusty assistant's going to hold up your books there, Warren. So thank you, Andrew. He's a very handsome man. So I think he's also good at modelling books. But look, thank you so much for joining us, Warren. It's an absolute honour and privilege to have you with us today. Hopefully it's probably quite late there where you are, is it?
Oh, it's fine. It's about 8:45 my time. We're just trying to catch up with Australia.
Well, no, that's quite civilized. And look, thank you so much for being with us today. And look, I know a little bit about your amazing work, but can you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got into advocating for men and boys and writing amazing books like The Boy Crisis?
Yes, I started out with the National Organization for Women in New York City, and in the 70s, I saw a huge increase in divorces, and I saw the first literature that showed that children of divorce did not do very well if they didn't have their fathers involved. And that sort of I got my attention. And then I brought that up to the board of NOW, and they all looked at me like, Warren, our feminist membership wants for women to be able to have the choice of whether they're the ones involved or whether they want the fathers involved at all. If they meet a new man who's better for them and they want to move away to a different location where maybe he has a job or they want to live, so another father will be just as fine and probably better. And so I said, that's not what the early research shows. And I could feel a silence on the board of just, and one of the people finally spoke up and very honestly said, Warren, almost all of your recommendations for speaking engagements, and therefore about 90% of your income comes from recommendations from us as feminists. And, if you're going to be saying that at the time of divorce, that fathers should, have, that the children need their biological dad, I'm not so sure that we can approve that, and that doesn't encourage us to recommend you. Mm-hmm. So I knew I had a decision to make, and I can't say it was easy because I was being interviewed, at all the major TV shows and written up, and everything I wanted I got, and 10 times as much. And I was, drawing large audiences, and women were worshiping me. And so I sort of had a sense that was all going to go away, and it more than did. I went from being sort of the darling of many millions of women to, sort of like he's the enemy. And it was an early cancel culture.
Wow. Well, look...
We've lost Warren for a moment, but we'll get him back.
We'll get him back.
He's got a lot to say for us today. Yep. Mm-hmm. And when we get him back, I want to ask him, we might hear he's back again.
Yep.
Can you hear us?
I disappeared for a moment. It's sort of funny, we said cancel culture and all of a sudden
Yeah, don't say that phrase again.
Yeah, the internet doesn't like it.
No.
Look, thank you. That's amazing, Warren. I think Andrew had a question.
We know that Warren has been in this space for a long period of time and been advocating for men and boys. And if I am researched properly, I believe GQ magazine actually referred to you as the Martin Luther King of the men's movement. I think it's awesome that you were just quoted as anything by GQ magazine. I'm yet to reach that milestone in my life, but that's probably a phrase that doesn't sit overly comfortably with you. However, my question is around the idea of us unlocking and releasing more advocate voices. How do we do that? How do we get more men and women taking up this role of advocating on such a crucial conversation?
A lot of young people want, this is the first time in human history that people have not had to be so focused all their life on survival. And in the developed nations around the world, in the middle and upper middle class, people want to have meaning because they're already able to take care of survival issues. And so we have to reach out to boys and say, when boys don't do well, when there's a boy crisis, there's also a girl crisis. When there's a man crisis, there's also a woman crisis. When a man commits suicide, his wife is usually extremely unhappy, and the mother and father say, "What did I do wrong?" And the daughter and the son say, "Oh my God, my father will never, be with me again. Maybe I'm going to commit suicide at that age too. Maybe it's in the family. Maybe it's in the genes." So many people are impacted when men don't do well. We're all in the same family boat, and when only one sex wins, both sexes lose.
Yes.
And so young men, we need you to put that message out in the world. We need you to know that when you say things that boys and men need help, you are also helping women. Women who are seeking future fathers have no interest in going around unemployment lines looking for them, or in the basement of their neighbors looking for a guy that's living in the basement at the age of 30. And so this is a win-win situation, and you can do something that will probably be more meaningful than any other thing that you can do, which is helping not half of humanity, boys and men, but all of humanity.
Yeah. No, that's a great message, Warren. And look, we couldn't agree more that when we lift up men and boys, we actually lift up women and girls as well. So,
absolutely.
Look, you're a very published author. You've written over 12 books, Warren, and I really enjoyed your interview with Jordan Peterson a few years ago too. So, look, we'll get to that in a minute, but go and check Warren out on YouTube. He's all over the internet. But Warren, I wanted to ask you, maybe what are some positive strengths of masculinity? And maybe you could zero in. We're celebrating men and boys today, so maybe obviously boys become men, but I think there's some things distinct to boys that they're great at, or they bring to humanity their strengths, and men bring their strengths. Maybe you've obviously researched this a lot. Can you tell us a bit more about what are those specific strengths, your thoughts on boys and men?
Yes, I'm living here in the United States. That we would be speaking German under Nazi rule, if it wasn't for the willingness of men to die, so that we could have freedom, and and the same in Australia. There was a huge problems there during World War II and so on, and Australians men died. Even more than American men did, sacrificing themselves so that others would live. And so that is one of the enormous strengths of man. And it also creates our toxicity. If we are in boot camp and a sergeant is saying to us, makes a comment, let's say, about Jewish people, and one of the guys in the boot camp is Jewish, and he says, officer, that you made a comment that was anti-Semitic, and I'm Jewish, that really offended me. The response of the sergeant would be, "Oh, isn't that sweet, little boy? Why don't you do 20 push-ups and show everybody that you have some muscle in there somewhere?" Now, why is the sergeant doing that? Because we're all training to become part of a war machine. We're training not to be sensitive, not to think of ourselves, not to, because in a war machine, the squeaky wheel makes the war machine not functional. And so the job of us in service is to forget about our feelings and to not acknowledge vulnerability, to just go ahead, and when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and be willing to die. So that's a strength for the nation, but it's not a strength for the boy. Feminists often say that men have male toxicity. We do have male toxicity, but not because of male privilege, but because of men's willingness to sacrifice everything about them that is human so that you can remain a human.
Exactly. Yeah. Those strengths, when used for bad, are toxic, but actually used well, directed in the right way, managed or focused in the right direction, are great strengths, and they're a great strength of humanity, aren't they? So, look.
Well, I'm going to interrupt there if I may. Actually, those strengths, the outcome of that, being willing to die for others, is a strength for everybody else. But the process that it takes to be willing to repress all your feelings does create toxicity. So the things that save us, that save the larger population, create toxicity for the actual male. And so one of the things that we really need to work on is how men can have the right balance of heroic intelligence and health intelligence, and that's the next generation's work with men. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. No, thank you, Warren. Speaking of the next generation, here in Australia, we have a problem where, and I believe you've written about this, but the education system in Australia often lets boys down for a variety of reasons. I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but I wanted to specifically mention, often boys in Australia are being diagnosed with disorders like ADD or ADHD. My view is that often that's just kind of the boisterousness of boys is there, and it's that often obviously not all cases. There are medical professionals that come to these conclusions for valid reasons sometimes, but I think my view is that often it's really just boys having that energy that they have. I mean, can you tell us a bit about that and how that? It's in boys, but it's often looked down upon negatively, but we're probably looking at it the wrong way, aren't we?
Yes, I think we are. So first of all, exactly what you said is true, meaning that sometimes ADHD is legitimate and needs to be worked on and needs to be treated. It doesn't need to be treated necessarily with medications. John Gray wrote the last third of the Boy Crisis book on ADHD and looking at cures for ADHD that were not medication-oriented types of cures. So I would encourage a read of that, especially if you know anyone that has ADHD. However, there are some schools in the United States that have found boys to be very much that way and have created schools where these boys come to the school, and what the most successful ones do is the first 2 hours of the day is devoted to sports and to physical activities. And the boys get their energy out of their system. And then the coaches do not continue for the rest of the day coaching other people because they've done those first 2 hours. They rather go around to the classrooms and see if any teacher is having a student that is having problems. And let's say you're having an algebra problem, that coach goes in and works with the boy to think of that algebra problem as the other team that they just trained to beat. And so it takes that doing approach, that athletic approach, and it applies it to the boy's intellectual processes as well. And so the boy is able to be much more effective in that type of way.
I don't know. Do we have any schools like that here?
Not that I'm aware of, but I find that quite fascinating, actually, that notion of taking an existing internal process and mechanism and then harnessing the strength of that to point at different outcomes. Are there other examples of where we're seeing that effective?
Very few schools. The name of the school that I just talked about is called Urban Dove, DOVE, and it's in New York, the New York area. And I talk about it, and this program's in the Boy Crisis book. So if you wish to sort of dig into some of the details of that, that's really helpful. But overall, boys need to do first.
Yeah.
So when I was a teacher, one of the things that I did this is way before, this is back in 1965, 1966, and I had before probably both of you were born. And when I was teaching,
that's before my time, Warren. But yeah, I mean, you have to ask Andrew.
You see what I've got to put up with here, Warren? It's unbelievable.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Go on.
No. So let's see, where was I?
1965 was it? That's around when Andrew was. No, sorry.
Yes,
stop.
That's what I was teaching. Yeah, and when I was teaching, I just loved to get people involved in things, and so I was teaching political science at the time, and so I was getting everybody to be Republicans or Democrats in a convention, and I had them act things out and so on. And the supervising teacher this is when I was student teaching. The supervising teacher came up to me later, and he said, some of the people that didn't do very well during the year are really doing well now. And I didn't realize at the time that the 4 kids that he mentioned were all boys. But what I was doing before I knew what I was doing was my natural propensity as a teacher is to involve and require somebody to do something and get out there. And that's that for any teacher can do more of that. Make sure you give boys and girls projects. Make sure you have them do things. Make sure you have them work together. These are ways that boys are more likely to thrive in school.
Mm. No, that's fantastic. Look, there's so many things we could probably talk about, Warren, but I really, because you've written so many books, but could you tell us your top 3 things maybe that you'd want the world to hear today? I mean, today is International Men's Day, and I think we've got quite a few people on the live stream now, but we've got people watching from all over the world. Obviously, the States and Australia, there's some. We're quite influenced by America culturally. We're probably, culturally speaking, 5-10 years behind America, I think, generally speaking. But, there are things certainly common to the Western world, but other countries too are grappling with some of these issues. Maybe what are your top 3 messages? How can we support and encourage men and boys around the world today? I know it's a big topic, but feel free to drill down into 3 specific things if you can, yeah.
The number one thing that we can do is to train couples, mothers and fathers, to be able to communicate effectively. And within the framework of communicating effectively, the most important single barrier for almost all couples is the inability to handle personal criticism without becoming defensive. If we, and one of the things I've done in the last 30 years is to do a workshop called Role Mate to Soulmate that I just did in book form recently. And in Role Mate to Soulmate, what I teach people to do is to develop a whole way that before they handle criticism, they prepare themselves to do it by having mindsets that alter the natural biological propensity to be defensive in response to criticism. So if you learn how to do that and learn how to create in your home a conflict-free zone and learn how to develop a disciplined system of specific appreciations for your partner, those 3 things are crucial, and they're all in the Role Mate to Soulmate book in much greater detail. But those things are the 3 most crucial things to that bond of a couple. When a couple is bonded and communicates well, and they can hear, and the children are watching their parents solve problems where they disagree, but in ways that they can fully hear each other, that allows the children to have a role model of how to communicate about differences with somebody without getting into arguments with them, without trying to defeat them, and so on. And so that's number one. And so what happens then is you have fewer divorces. If you have fewer divorces, so the good communication leads to fewer divorces. The smaller the number of divorces, the less the dad deprivation is. When there are divorces, very frequently for a number of reasons, the dads start having less contact with the children. That's terrible for girls, but it's even more terrible for boys. I'm not just talking about terrible in abstract terms. I'm talking about the telomeres of boys, the inside of our cells of our body. We have telomeres. And the longer the telomeres are, when we are 9.5 years of age, the longer we are likely to live. And boys and girls that have father involvement at the age of 9.5 have longer telomeres than those that don't. And boys then again have 40% longer telomeres when they have father involvement versus those of girls, because both girls and boys are negatively affected by dad deprivation, but boys are significantly more affected by it because they don't have a male role model, and they look in the mirror and they see that their body language looks a lot like their dad's, and their eyes and their nose and their hair look a lot like their dad's, but they don't really know their dad, so they feel abandoned. And this is one of the reasons why being a stepfather is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't substitute for being a biological dad. And so also it's really important to understand how the differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting. From a mom's point of view, a dad roughhousing often looks like she just has one more child to monitor. So, but no father ever tells a mother. One of the reasons I want to have do roughhousing with my kids is, one of the reasons is to have fun. Yeah. But another reason is because that it teaches the way that I do roughhousing, and the way most fathers do it, will teach the children that if they're too rough, they will lose the roughhousing. And so therefore they have to pay attention to their children's, their sisters and their brothers' needs as well. So if you stick your elbow in your sister's eye and she starts crying, that's the end of the roughhousing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what does that do? We now have data that shows. Are we still connected?
I can hear you. Yeah, we got you, Warren. Okay. Keep going. This is great. Thank you.
We have data that shows that when the children do that roughhousing, because they're forced to think about their brothers and sisters' needs, their empathy increases. Now, have you ever heard a dad say, "I want to do roughhousing in part because I want our children to be more empathetic"? I mean, the mother would require the data for that, and she wouldn't be able to believe it. But the data is there, and it's in the Boy Crisis book, and it's really so important for the mothers and fathers to understand the 7 basic differences between dad-style parenting and mom-style parenting, and then learn with that how to create what I call checks and balance parenting, where the children get the best of mom and the best of dad.
Wow, that's amazing. There's a lot there, Warren. So we had the 3 things. The first one was great, good marriage, good communication in your marriage. One thing we often say at Dads for Kids is the best thing a father can do for his or her children is to love the mother. So that's, couldn't agree with you more. And then the second,
everyone wants to love their partner. That's why they got married.
Yeah.
But no one knows how to do it well. Yeah. No one, because it's biologically. When you hear criticism, historically and biologically speaking, you felt there was a possible enemy. So it was functional for survival for you to become defensive so you didn't get killed, or to kill the enemy before the enemy kills you. That was functional for survival. It's just dysfunctional for love.
Yeah.
So it takes an artificial process that I call the caring and sharing process to train, to have people move from that naturally defensive response to an unnatural response of being able to provide a space that allows your partner, no matter what she or he has to say, no matter what the tone of voice, you support that partner. And so that's the process that I talk about in the Role Mate to Soulmate book.
Yeah, just what's the name of that book again? Just say that again for us, Warren.
It's Role Mate, ROLE, Mate to, not cellmate, but soulmate.
Feels like a cellmate maybe sometimes, but yeah, to all our viewers, check out that book, Role Mate to Soulmate. Obviously, we have the Boy Crisis as well. And Warwick mentioned to me, Warren, that are you writing a new book as well at the moment? Can you tell us a bit about that too?
Yes, I'm writing a book called The Man Crisis, and looking at sort of some of the different things as men get a little bit older. What's the impact of the hashtag Me Too? Helping everybody understand the degree to which men may sometimes had moved too quickly and had problems, and left women feeling victimized. And so we learned, we had through hashtag #MeToo a much deeper understanding of women, but there was no hashtag #MeToo for men.
Mm.
And men also have feelings, and men also feel rejected, and men also have. So we've looked in the last years at the female experience of powerlessness and the female experience of male power. But no one has looked at the male experience of powerlessness and the male experience of female power.
Mm.
And so that's what one of the things I'll be looking at in the man crisis. And I did look at that with some different slants on it in the myth of male power that you and that Australians supported amazingly well. It became #1 in Australia, as you may or may not know.
Right.
And but the moment it became #1, Random House published it, and the Random House head was a feminist. And when the feminists protested it, they didn't do a second printing of a #1 bestseller.
It's a bit of a common theme there, isn't there, Andrew?
There is, indeed.
Yeah. Warren, Andrew hosts a show called The Man Show. So I think The Man Crisis it's the kind of book that sounds all right up your alley.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah, the name of the YouTube channel is The Man Show with Andrew Gray, and we talk about all of those kinds of issues that you're touching on there. And I think one of the factors that comes up in our conversations a lot is the role of fatherlessness for men of all ages, and it's an impact on a man's life that runs right through his life, whether he's a young boy, a young adult, or a grown man in his senior years. What's your take on that? What are you seeing? What are you observing? What is the data telling you?
I have 3 things to say about that. Yes, yes, and yes. And here's why. So the lack of father involvement is the single biggest predictor of a young male committing suicide.
Wow.
When I ran for governor of California, I spoke around some prison populations, and I asked the men in the prisons, how many of you had an active, involved father? About 5 to 10% raised their hand.
Yes.
The other 90% said they did not. And when I talked with those prisoners about the importance of fathers, I had men coming up to me afterwards, pushing me aside so nobody would hear them talk to me. And they had muscles like I will never have. And with these tattoos, they were saying to me, for the first time in my life, I feel like I could contribute something to prevent my children from making the mistakes that I made that put me in prison. Up until now, I had no reason to get out of prison. I thought I was just a total loser. Fathers have so much to contribute.
Yes.
In the back of the boy crisis, I got so much there that I just decided to make an appendix out of it. I ended up with 55 proofs or highly correlated or causal connections between father involvement and boys being much less likely to drop out of high school, being much more likely to be employed,
Yes.
Being much more likely to be able to have the single biggest thing that fathers contribute. I hinted about this with when I was talking about the roughhousing. The single biggest thing is postponed gratification. And postponed gratification is the single biggest predictor of success or failure. So, for example, when women and men supervise children, women will set an earlier bedtime. Men will set a later bedtime. But when the children actually get to bed earlier with the dad than they do with the mom, even though the mom sets an earlier bedtime.
Interesting.
Why? Because with children, let's say the bedtime's 8:30 by mom and 9 o'clock by dad. At 8:30, maybe one of the children will come up and say, "Mom, I'm so freaked out. I didn't finish my homework." And mom will say, well, I did tell you to get off the phone with your girlfriend a few hours ago, but you're right. I don't want you to go to school without your homework being done. Okay, don't do that again, but you should you go ahead and do your homework. Okay, Mom, I finished my homework. Can you can read me a story? Isn't it great that I finished my homework? Oh, okay, I'll read you a story, but you should have done your homework sooner anyway. And so the mother will repeat, that is, she will set the boundary and repeat the setting of the boundary. And of course, sometimes this is reversed. The dads do the mom thing and the mom does the dad thing. But the mom will more frequently then give in, seeing the value of what like going to school with your homework done. Dads will do that the first time around. But usually the second or third time around, the dad will go ahead and say, sorry, this time you go to school without your homework being done. You didn't pay attention to what I said. And so therefore, ultimately, the children will know they can't get around manipulating their father to a later bedtime, but they can get around manipulating their mother to an earlier bedtime. If you're listening to this and you're a mom, please pay attention to this, because you are putting so much energy with a good heart into doing the right thing for your children, but you're teaching them to not respect you. When you repeat boundaries without enforcing them, they learn to manipulate you, not respect you. And that is a crime for the children, for you, and for the dad.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Warren. That's fantastic. I mean, there's so much there. We could talk all day or all night in your case, but but look, thank you so much. And to everyone watching, check out The Boy Crisis. Is there a website people can go to learn more about your work, Warren, to keep up to date?
Yeah. Yes, warrenfarrell.com. And when you go there, check out the couples communication, which has the Role Mate to Soulmate, but also in the Role Mate to Soulmate book is access to a 10-hour video course that you and your partner can do with each other that actually helps you implement what's being said in words in the book.
Great. Well, to everyone watching, there's some fantastic resources there, so make sure you check them out. And look, thank you, Warren. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and keep up the great work. You're a great blessing.
Thank you. And Andrew, I just love that you're doing that show, and please keep that up and let me know more about it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Warren.
Thank you.
Thank you.